I'm Tyler, and this is the AntiSocial Network.
Don't look away. Let the fear wash over you.
Hey, T-Dog. What is up in his house?
Welcome to your number one source of internet oddities.
My life is a living hell.
There's just so much beauty in the world, you know?
Here we host conversations with interesting people across the internet.
The God you believe in is not only not good, that God made a world filled with liberals.
Curse of the world, unite! You have nothing to lose but your chains.
You haven't heard of them, but I have.
Perhaps I am cringe, but that makes me free.
Join us every Friday for discussions on culture, entertainment, politics, religion, and whatever happens to catch our fancy that week.
Hell is actually real, and Christianity was right all along. Sorry.
Oh.
The cities are decaying, destroyed by decades of leftist policies. Return to monkey.
You're probably thinking this is some pretty deep stuff, and you're right.
This episode of the AntiSocial Network is brought to you by North Arrow Coffee Company, a veteran-owned company that donates 15% of its proceeds to pro-life groups like Soundview Pregnancy Services and Compass Care Crisis Pregnancy Center in Buffalo, New York. Support the AntiSocial Network and use code AntiSocial10 at checkout to receive 10% off your next purchase of coffee and other coffee-related products. Thank you very much. This week we are joined once again by Ethan McGuire. You've done a lot of things since we started podcasting. You're not freelance dispatch writer, published poet. Am I missing anything else?
Those are the two big things.
Those are still impressive. Like I wouldn't know what the one to lead off with is. They're like nothing to scoff at.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So we're about a week, or just shy of a week out from the Oscars at this point, as far as recording.
Yeah.
And we both seen. Did you watch the actual ceremony this year, or?
No.
Neither did I. So
I was actually working.
I didn't care
during the ceremony. Well, I wouldn't have watched it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no romanticism from us on the question of the ceremony of it all. But it did seem like it was a nice event overall. But the Best Picture winner turned out to be a movie that seems to have caught both of our attention in yours in a rather negative capacity, mine in a similar capacity, maybe not as negative, but do you want to just kind of describe? Obviously if the movie's Everything Everywhere All at Once, it won 9 Oscars, nothing to scoff at, but you did a very good piece in Postmodern Conservative, kind of outlining your overall thoughts on the movie. Do you want to kind of explain that?
Sure, yeah. Titus had asked me to write about it a while back, and I had originally wanted to write a huge article, just probably a few thousand words, talking about Everything Everywhere All at Once, nihilism in pop culture now, metamodernism. I wanted to compare the kind of like Dollar General Buddhism and Taoism in the movie to like other movies that have done Buddhism and Taoism, well, and in a more spiritually serious way. I was even, I was thinking about perhaps maybe instead comparing them to some of the movies that actually came out this year that I thought were spiritually richer than that one, because Everything Everywhere All at Once is one of those movies, not one of the top 10 like best-selling movies of the year, biggest box office movies of the year, but also that was without China or anything like that, like a lot movies more and more are. So for a Best Picture nominee and winner, it's fairly popular, especially among millennials and Gen Zers, I think. But I didn't end up doing that huge article. I decided just to do a quick punch at the Postmodern Conservative for Titus. And kind of my take on it is that, I guess to be honest, right out the gate, I've got to say that the whole multiverse parallel universe idea is to me fairly silly. So, I'm not going to be a good audience for that. But even so, because of that and also just other things in the movie, I found it to be not only nihilistic, like any movie that is going to talk about the multiverse or parallel universes kind of has to be, but also I found it to wrap up in a lot of just kind of very empty and hollow sentimentality. and sort of a cynical sentimentality that is pretty exemplary of our current moment, especially among elite type people, but among really the whole American culture for sure.
That's a fair summary. I mean, I should say that when the movie came out, I quite liked it. I mean, I liked it in that way that all young male cinephiles tend to like, you know, goofy genre mashup movies. You know, your Edgar Wright movies,
Sure.
stuff of that. You know, the Tarantino. Like it's got that energy to it where we're just gonna take all these things that you liked from other genres and put them together in a new way that's creative. And at the time, I still affirm it's very, very well made and creative movie. It's very engaging. It's a movie I can't fault for taking a lot of really big swings, but I think you're right in your piece to say that to say that it basically falls apart on actually delivering a meaningful answer to any of the questions it tries to ask, because it hits the stride where it reveals that these characters are complete nihilists. At least they're saying they're nihilists. They believe that life is meaningless. They believe that there's no reason to exist or no reason to try in life. That everything is pointless, and that the complete the scale of the universe and its infinite problems makes it impossible for there to be any sort of way to rationalize life in a way that doesn't make that suicide a logical answer and a way out and all these things. And by the end, it doesn't really give you an answer as to why not to do that. It's kind of this it's this rote, I'm tempted to say Rick and Morty-esque kind of pop humanism that says that basically just ignores the problem. It just says, hey, life is meaningless, but my milk's spoiled, so I just got to go back to doing things. I'm like, that's not serious philosophical intrigue.
No.
It reminds me of the guy I used to work with in one of my old warehouses that thought that Morty waxing philosophical that nothing is important, so you just gotta enjoy your time you spend with your family. Oh, it's so profound. I'm like, this is profound to a 12-year-old. This is like, you know, someone's first grasp with mortality in terms of their philosophical understanding of the world. This is not a deep reflection on life. This is this is like you hit the bottom of the barrel in terms of your worldview, and you're just desperately clinging to the walls to find a way to dig yourself out, and you can't find it. Which although I will say I don't know if I agree about the multiverse thing, just because I've seen so many conservatives really push back on the multiverse in the last year, and even the last few years. I remember like 6 years ago when Dave Rubin hosted a debate between Dennis Prager and Michael Shermer, and Dennis Prager just went off on the concept of the multiverse. It's like it's completely illogical. It's completely faith-based. There's no reason to believe it. And Shermer just turns to him and says, "Well, it's a mathematical possibility. It's not a provable concept." And I don't really have a strong opinion on it, because it's essentially just an axiom that assumes things. It's not a provable concept. And you know, when Doctor Strange does a multiverse adventure, or Spider-Man does his multiverse adventure, I'm generally of the mind that they're just doing that because they want to do genre mashups, or, you know, here's a world where the character that's a bad guy is actually a good guy. It's like, it's not, for the most part, it's not a deep existential dig into the implications behind it. It's just a storytelling device. And it's not, it doesn't, even something like the Marvel movies where they kind of hint that there might be more of a philosophical implication behind it, they never really delve into it or take it seriously, which is, so I don't mind the concept when it's just being used as a creative, you know, option, because I mean it works in comic books. Like, it's just a high-minded science fiction concept. That's all it's really good for in terms of storytelling. So, but I guess that kind of makes me the minority opinion, because you know, the Claremont Review has already done a piece about why multiverses are terrible ideas. I'm like, okay, I am way behind the curve on this.
Well, I think I may have a stronger opinion on it than you do, but I'm not against using multiverses, parallel universes as a storytelling technique. I think that as a storytelling technique, I definitely prefer to go along the lines of more like a Rashomon or a Zhang Yimou's Hero, to where instead of exploring parallel universes, we're exploring parallel narratives. I would definitely prefer that, where in the end we either know or find out that one of them is true. So I am not a big fan of multiverses as a storytelling technique, but I'm not as against it as some of the conservative and adjacent writers that you cite and are kind of alluding to there. I mean, it can be done well. I mean, the movie that kind of the two things that seems to have set this off, this obsession with multiverses, seems to be, number one, unfortunately for me, the Rick and Morty TV show. Not a big that, and so, you know, anyone who's listening and loves that kind of stuff may be, you know, dismissive of my opinion, since, you know, I'll attest to not really enjoying it.
Well,
but I do want to attest to my, like, what I do think about it. But also, you had Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which made this very popular and made a lot of, like, I mean, that's probably why the Spider-Man No Way Home got made. So I think that did it reasonably well. And I have some thoughts on that, but sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's fine. I mean, you can keep talking.
I mean, I think that a lot of times it does tend to be a bit of a childish storytelling device. And if it's brought into adult movies, I think it's going to be either cynical or nihilist or both of those things. And I'm not necessarily leveling the accusation of cynicism at Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think a lot of people involved in making it were possibly sincere in some parts of it, but I do think that you kind of, if you're going to take it seriously at all, like Everything Everywhere All at Once does, it has to be a little bit nihilistic, at least a little bit.
You brought up Rick and Morty, and I think post McDonald's wrecking, so circa 2018, 2017 or so, it's not an unpopular opinion to say that Rick and Morty is not high art. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
It's one thing when you take an Adult Swim show and give it like a minor amount of popularity, because that channel just exists to do messed up things for the sake of doing messed up things. So I can handle that. It's not the height of the cathedral. It's, you know, it's just the thing it's just trying to be this weird art project in the corner, and no one really cares about it. The problem is that its ideas seem to be taken way too seriously, and that's evidenced by the fact that Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert just seem to exist in this absolute moral desert, and where there's a complete dearth of meaning or purpose. But then there's all these weird things where they do think that there's a clear sense of objective morality, obviously with things like the lesbianism subplot. Like they clearly think that it's cruel for a parent to not love their child. And I'm like, you just said nothing matters, and yet you're saying affirming your child matters. I'm like, that's a clear contradiction. I'm not saying like that's not even to say like you need to be mean to lesbians. Like it's a philosophical incongruity that's so common in the progressive worldview, where they say ultimate goodness does not exist, but objective values exist, and it's just this. They don't think about it. They don't really dig down into it, because they know in their heart of hearts that these things that these core essence values are there, and it just leaves this absolute landscape of meaning that just go on completely untouched in the film, where, you know, you compare it to something like Groundhog Day, where you have this very rich texture of a life well lived, and, you know, it's also it's technically like a different variation of that premise of like a guy lives through 1,000 different days, or as opposed to a woman living through 1,000 different versions of herself. But
Yeah.
in that story, it's like, whether it doesn't matter what your philosophical system is. The moral of the story is, life is good when you care about other people, because it's rooted in a very real sense of people and society and shared social cohesion. And if you're the weird misanthrope, you're a weird misanthrope. You're not the good guy. And in this one, it's just it takes such glee and such absolute affirmation in this idea that life itself it's not worth defending as something in and of itself, because underneath it all is just the everything bagel, where when you put everything on the bagel, nothing is there. When you have an infinite number of worlds, every single world is insignificant. There's no reason to care about life. There's no reason to care about anything. Everything breaks down at this level. This is why nihilism is bad. Like, even if you're not religious, nihilism is bad. Like, it's emblematic of the film that it can't dig out of it.
Yeah, I have no problem with art exploring opinions opposed to my own.
Yeah,
you know, just like I referenced in my piece and in some other places, I think on Twitter, you know, some movies that I thought really illustrated Buddhism or Taoism as well really well. You know, I mean, I am not a Buddhist, I'm a Christian. So I obviously don't believe in those tenets, but I think these things can be explored really well, but they ought to be taken seriously. And in Everything Everywhere All at Once, the idea is taken seriously until it's just not anymore, if it ever was. But it does seem like they're taking some of the philosophical ideas somewhat seriously until the end. And then some people might say, well, it's just a fun movie. They're just making it to be entertaining and silly. But number one, there are a lot of people who will take these kinds of ideas seriously and will try to figure out how they can apply them to their lives. So as a filmmaker, you do have to have your audience in mind about what they might think or not think about it. But also, I mean, they are trying to work toward an emotional payoff or a story payoff at the end. And then, you know, they build up to her reconciling with her daughter. And then they give Evelyn's character that line, nothing matters, we can do whatever we want. Well, if nothing matters, you know, then it just causes a problem for all of the emotion that has led up to that point. And, you know, if you're working in a tradition that already has a moral universe set up for you, then you don't have to set out from the beginning of the movie to explain why something is good, why something is bad. But if you're going to make a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once, where you're creating a whole universe from scratch, you're going to need to set out, okay, well, why would it be good to stay with your family then? You know what I mean? If this was a movie set in traditionalist China, historical China, then we could have the Taoist idea that familial loyalty is important. You know, the movie wouldn't necessarily have to set that up. But since you're creating a moral spiritual universe from scratch, you have to explain that. And that kind of, the morality is never given any kind of foundation whatsoever in the film.
It's really not, and it's really trite by the late game, when it actually does get to try to find that solution to life, where, like you said it best, is like, what's his name? Ke Huy Quan. His solution is just, I don't know what's happening, but we need to be nice, which is the most saccharine sentiments in the world. And I'm reminded. It's such a. I mean, I obviously I'm for being nice and conciliatory, but these are concepts that
I can agree with that.
Like, these are concepts that are rooted in presuppositions and virtues. And if you're just going to say, you know, you should, you know, life's meaningless, but it's better to be alive than to be dead. Well, okay, what's the basis of that? Build anything at all. Like, you don't have to retroactively rebuild Christianity for this to actually say something about morality. This could be a movie about them rebuilding a new moral system. This could be about them understanding what coming to some sort of deeper revelation through their experience of living through all these lives, but it's not. They
attempt to.
I mean, the reason they use the multiverse storytelling device in this film is really just because they want to have these alternate universe scenarios where we get to see all the different versions of Evelyn's life and the male character's life. I forget his name, but Wayman. Yeah, Wayman and Evelyn's life. We just need to see like these other versions of them who are more successful having similar existential doubts and going through and things, because it's supposed to have the moment of the famous alternate universe Rick and Morty moment where, you know, a couple that's about on the precipice of divorce see themselves in an alternate dimension where both of them are successful because they never met each other, and then at the moment they're about to get divorced, the couple meet up again and said, "I wish I'd married you in high school." Like, they literally do a scene from Rick and Morty in Everything Everywhere All at Once. And
they try to frame it in a In the Mood for Love, Wong Kar-wai, like very reminiscent scene as well.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, tips off to Daniels and their cinephilia and their ability to quote more prestigious films than themselves, but it's
yeah.
Like, it is what it is. Like, it needs a deeper rooting, or at least any rooting at all.
Yeah, and again, a lot of these ideas, I'm not, you know, I'd definitely be comfortable with having some of these explored, but the answer they give to it, I mean, what is there, as I said in my piece, what is there to keep restlessness from creeping back in? I mean, she's unhappy because she's restless with her life and she's thinking about what it could have been, so on and so forth. I mean, what is to keep her from thinking about that again? And especially not just her, because they try to give her a revelation by her cycling through every single version of herself to come to this conclusion that she can be kind and nice, and to, you know, decide, like, to give all these people their weird fetish, like, satisfactions at the end in that final fight. I guess the movie's solution to nihilism is Epicureanism. Great. Well, I mean, the multiverse, the idea of parallel universes comes from Epicureanism anyway, in its origins in Greek philosophy anyway. So that's not necessarily a problem. I'm
not saying they aren't incompatible. I'm not saying they're not incompatible. I'm saying the two most obnoxious philosophical systems that happen to coincide in their solutions. So
yeah, you know, but I mean, it's all well and good for Evelyn then at the end, and it's definitely all well and good for Waymond. He was content all along, or somewhat content all along. But why is this a solution for their daughter? What is going to keep her, like, now? If she, of course, the version that she confronts doesn't have this knowledge. But if she were to learn of this knowledge in any way, what would keep her happy? What would keep her content with the life that Evelyn is trying and Waymond are trying to recreate there? I mean, there's just no indication that this is a solution at all, except for the moments we see at the end of the movie. You know, so that's kind of my problem with it, as well as not facing up to the philosophical questions that it raises.
Yeah, I mean, the movie that kind of came to mind while I was reflecting on it was, I'm curious if you'd agree, but it was 2001, just because it kind of has that similar sense of, you know, going out into the universe to find your humanity kind of understanding of reality, and it's in that one it's posited on very modernist terms, and it's also got that 1960s kind of vague Gnostic spiritualist idea that that when human beings evolve, we're going to turn into a cloud. We're going to turn into like a formless conscious ghost and then fade into the universe and just be like pantheistic gods. And I have no idea where that idea comes from, but it's, you know, you see that all the time in that kind of generation of storytelling and, you know, up through Futurama. Yeah. But like 2001 also presupposes a moral universe. It presupposes that human survival in and of itself is a good thing, and that our wrestling with technology and our own identities is our salvation in some way, and that by overcoming those things we do get to the next level. And I don't know what purpose that is morally, because that the movie and the book version of 2001 are extremely opaque in terms of their implications. But there's at least a sense that that movie understands that even if it's fighting against a mainstream understanding of something, even if it's offering us a vague answer to difficult questions, because it can't really answer them. It can only give us a sensation of the experience of what it means to have your world completely changed and to have your consciousness upgraded into something that's not entirely human anymore and borderline Lovecraftian. But like there's still that sense of a through line there, and you don't get that in everywhere all at once. It's like you're watching a generation. You're watching the 60s generation push against a very specific moral idea, and then once the moral idea is gone, there's nothing. It's like it's a barren wasteland.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say about that for sure. Number one, you're talking about the barren wasteland. The most common idea, especially among Americans, but across people all over the world, with our version that we have of individualism, is that we can take a little bit of Taoism, we can take a little bit of Buddhism, we can take a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Islam, and create our own religions. But of course, the more people that embrace that kind of individualistic spiritual mindset, those religions would disappear, right? So that's one part of it that I think about and definitely tend to resist. That's why I chafe against the kind of generic brand Buddhism that it presents in the movie. But also, you're talking about 2001: Space Odyssey. Yeah, it's very opaque, but I think you're right, on the right track with the idea that it's not really giving a moral solution at the end. It's kind of saying this technological innovation has gone too far, and if it were to overtake us, that would be immensely sad for the human race, even if we were to evolve to another state. But then also, I mean, I don't know how well the movie really communicates it, but we know from interviews with Kubrick that he was presupposing a Christian mindset and a Christian audience watching the movie. How well it communicates that, I don't really know, but that was in his mind. And as far as I can tell, nothing like that is in the mind of the Daniels when they made this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Daniels' actual ideology in life is. I know that they've talked about the fact that they struggle with attention deficit disorder, which is part of why the film is hyperactive as it is just that there's this constant need in them to maximize every emotion and just feel everything and just kind of fight through it. So it gives you all these warm and funny sensations while you're watching it, to the point where the darkness doesn't really settle in until you've had a while to really think about it. And but my assumption is that they're thoroughly modern young people living in the city, and I've met those kind of people. They don't have a lot going for a lot of those don't have a lot going for them in terms of a greater sense of the world. They're kind of just they're Epicureans. They're trying to get they're just kind of getting through life on sense experience, and that's all they got.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be really interesting one thing that is interesting is to explore why multiverses are so interesting to people our age and younger. I mean, why it would be interesting to a kid reading comic books makes complete sense. Why it would be interesting to an audience watching something like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse makes sense. You get all these different characters from all these different places all coming together at once, right? That makes sense. But why it should be interesting to coming on middle-aged filmmakers, like, people like getting to grow older, why it would be interesting to someone like that, I think, is something to explore. I mean, I think that one thing about it is that it is a way to try to connect with spirituality that does not presuppose any kind of God, any kind of Taoistic binding spirituality. You don't have to confront anything like that, and yet you can also imagine endless possibilities. You can imagine basically committed. You don't have to be committed to any one way of thinking, any one way of living, if you were to embrace the idea of multiverses, right? Anything that if you make a wrong choice in this one, in this universe, it could be that you'll make, the right choice in a different universe. And there is some reflection in something like karma in that, but at least with karma, you have the idea that if you do bad things, you get bad karma, and if you do good things, you get good karma. That doesn't even matter within the idea of whatever kind of philosophical, scientific spirituality that might exist within multiverses. Doesn't matter whether you do good or not. There's some universe where you got it right. And I think that's appealing. Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say it's appealing, rather than I'd say it's easy to believe in, at least from the modern worldview, because the multiverse is one of those things where people, they grow up watching Cosmos on Discovery Channel, and they think then their entire scientific worldview is never touched again. But it's I think for a lot of people, it's a speculative idea that it sounds right because because it's an idea that's very specifically popular in modern astrophysics and quantum physics, and there's a lot of a lot of assumptions of modern science come out of the assumption that there's a multiverse, and so it's just easy for people to not question it and then just kind of try to backwards engineer morality out of it, because it's a lot harder to build a religious or moral system that's sensible all the way to the ground. It's a lot easier to take the basic road and then work your way, and then work out just enough to the point where you say, well, life is meaningless, but you shouldn't be mean to each other. We're all gonna die. It's like, well, but I mean, that doesn't really answer the question. It takes a lot to develop a worldview like Confucianism or Aristotelianism or Stoicism. Like these are moral philosophies that geniuses came up with, even if they're wrong in large segments of it. Like these are people that are grappling with the reality of a world where, the Greek philosophy is all based on the idea that the gods don't actually care about you, but you still need to have a civil society. So it takes those two endpoints and it makes a philosophy around them, or makes philosophies around them. So
sure, I don't know if I would, like, in the Greek gods, they do care about certain humans.
Well, that's the thing.
They will care about you if you don't show a stranger xenia, things that. Like, there are certain tenets you have to abide by, or else you will get the lightning bolt, right?
But it's a very it's not a personal god like Christianity,
right.
Where
you don't have a spiritual relationship,
and your morals in regards to the gods are almost entirely mercenary. Like if Zeus comes to your door and you shut him out and he burns your house down, that's not a moral judgment. That's you should have been nicer to the traveler, not
or Odysseus having to sleep with all those beautiful goddesses, right? He didn't have a choice.
Yeah, exactly. It's so the morality, it's not universal in that sense. It's your philosophy is not tied to the importance of your personal god.
Sure.
It's based on a series of core assumptions about the value of logic and the realities of building a civil society, which is how you get, Stoicism is the number one religion of the Roman Empire. It's
sure.
Religion's probably the wrong word, but but moral understanding. But Daniels aren't Stoics. They're not Confucians, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And
I don't need them to be necessarily.
I mean, anything would help.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the movie as a reflection to a certain extent of how millennials and Gen Zers feel today, I think it does reflect a little bit how they feel today. But then there is the need to add a moral at the end, because whether they wanted it to be a popular movie or not, the end of the movie can't be Evelyn's daughter committing suicide. That's a very there are plenty of A24 movies where that's basically the moral, but they wanted to make something that was a little more appealing to more people, right?
Yeah.
So they can't just say, oh, the universe is meaningless, so we might as well kill ourselves. But they want to bring it back at the end to okay, well, there's got to be something, so be kind.
Yeah, they can't really they don't even try to aspire for more. Like, I do agree. As a depiction of the moral universe of millennials, it is incredibly useful because it shows you their thought process, and it shows you the way so many people are our age. They just haven't thought a lot of things through. Like, this is a masterpiece expression of a very silly idea. Like, that's what it is. Like, I'll go to bat for the film a little and say that, I'm probably glad that this won over a handful of the stupid things that got nominated for Oscars this year, but I don't remember. But like, it's not as self-serious as a lot of them. It's weird that it won, but I guess when you got a bunch of new millennial voters on, they're gonna have an advantage. But
I don't think it's too weird that it won. It is a weird movie, but they've been looking for weird and diverse movies to promote. But if you think about it, ultimately, its values are the ending values are very boomer and Gen X, right? Like, let's forget about Christianity. Let's forget about all these religions.
Not even think of them.
Let's accept everybody. What's that?
Not even think of them.
Yeah, let's not even think about it. Let's just be nice to each other. Let's sing Kumbaya. That's basically the end of the movie. I mean, so it gives like the boomer and Gen X voters a chance to say, okay, we can be diverse, we can be liberal, we can throw progressive young voters a bone, but also we can have all of our shallow values reaffirmed.
They're both 35, so I guess, like, would that make them early millennials or late Gen Xers?
I think that would make them early. They would make them really early millennials, I think.
Okay, so that they might still have a little bit of that, the Gen X touch to them, but in any case,
but I mean, is this movie predicting that Gen Xers are becoming the new boomers?
That'd be funny if that was the primary takeaway of this movie. But we're just about out of time. Do you want to tell people where they can find you and where they can find your in-depth review of the film?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to check out my review, go over to the Postmodern Conservative. That is Titus Chichera's Substack that he has lots of people writing from over there. It's a continuation of, I think they used to have that as a thing at First Things and National Review back in the days of Peter Lawler and all that. And that's a continuation that Titus Chichera and some of those other guys have continued. But that's at pomocon.substack.com. My article is just called Everything Everywhere All at Once and Popular Nihilism. But otherwise, you can find me on Twitter at a heavy metal pin or at my website, theflummoxed.com. And so I try to gather all my stuff together there.
There you go. Good to talk to you as always. And I don't know if you should watch. I guess go watch Everything Everywhere All at Once and make up your own opinion. We're not,
It's fun to watch to a certain extent. Well,
it's a comedy martial arts film with Short Round as the male lead. So it's, I can't hate it. It's got a lot of good in it. It's just, we both want things to dig deeper and hit some sort of pay dirt.
Yeah.
Or at least not.
And I mean, if you're go ahead.
No, you go. You're doing it.
If you're looking for an absurdist action movie, I mean, I would just recommend like Stephen Chow.
There you go.
I don't think you have to watch it, but anyway.
All right. Well, good talking to you again. Have a good night.
Good talking to you, Doug.
The AntiSocial Network is a Groupthink Productions and cultural review podcast. Editing, hosting, and producing are by Tyler Hummel, art by Crystal Cowley, and original music is composed by Guap Squad Gang and Melissa Lafira. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment below and tell us anyone you think would be a good guest for the show. Thank you for listening.